The year is 1942. The world is engulfed in the flames of the Second World War, a conflict that has already reshaped the globe in countless ways. Nations are locked in a desperate struggle for survival and dominance, with battles raging across Europe, Asia and Africa. Rommel's panzers surge across the North African sands. The German Afrika Korps, led by the brilliant and audacious General Erwin Rommel, is making a bold push towards the east. Their tanks and troops move with a relentless determination, cutting through the desert like a knife through butter. Their objective, the Suez Canal, the lifeline of the British Empire. This narrow waterway is crucial for maintaining the flow of supplies and reinforcements from the colonies to the British Isles. Control of the canal means control of a vital strategic asset. Against all odds, the impossible happens. The Axis forces, through a combination of tactical brilliance and sheer tenacity, managed to break through the heavily fortified British defences. The news of this breakthrough sends ripples of shock and disbelief through the Allied command. The Axis powers seize control of the Suez Canal. This victory is not just a military triumph, it is a symbolic blow to the British Empire. The sight of German soldiers standing victorious on the banks of the canal is a powerful image that resonates around the world. It's a stunning victory that sends shockwaves through the Allied nations. The loss of the Suez Canal is a devastating blow to the morale of the Allied forces and their supporters. Flags fly at half-mast, and the mood in the Allied capitals is one of somber reflection and urgent reassessment. The immediate consequences are immense. Allied military strategists scramble to come up with a new plan to counter the Axis advance. Crisis meetings are held and maps are pored over as leaders seek to find a way to turn the tide back in their favour. The Mediterranean, a vital artery for the British Navy, is effectively closed. The loss of the Suez Canal means that the British Navy can no longer move freely through the Mediterranean, severely hampering their ability to project power in the region. Shipping lanes connecting Britain to India and the Far East are severed. The flow of goods, troops and resources that are essential for the war effort is disrupted, creating logistical nightmares for the British command. Oil, a critical resource for the Allied war machine, is now in danger. The loss of the Suez Canal threatens the supply of oil from the Middle East, which is vital for keeping the Allied tanks, ships and planes operational. The Axis breakthrough has not only shifted the balance of power in North Africa, but has also created a ripple effect that will be felt across the entire theatre of war. The fall of the Suez Canal is a devastating blow to Allied morale. This isn't just a military defeat, it's a symbolic catastrophe. The canal represents British power and prestige in the region. Its loss casts a long shadow of doubt over the Allied cause. The British people, already enduring years of war, are stunned. The confidence instilled by early victories fades. Doubts about the war's eventual outcome begin to surface. The Suez disaster shakes the very foundations of their resolve. The strategic implications are equally dire. The Suez Canal is the linchpin of the Allied presence in North Africa. With it in Axis hands, supplying their forces becomes a logistical nightmare. Supplies must now travel the long and perilous route around the Cape of Good Hope. Ships become vulnerable to German U-boats in the Atlantic. The flow of men and materials slows to a trickle. The North African campaign is in jeopardy.
Despite the magnitude of the Axis triumph, it's a victory with limitations. The Axis powers, led by Germany, Italy and Japan, have achieved a significant milestone by capturing the Suez Canal. This strategic waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea is crucial for controlling supply routes and military logistics. However, this victory, while impressive, does not guarantee ultimate success in the war. Capturing the Suez Canal doesn't automatically win the war for the Axis powers. The canal's strategic importance cannot be overstated, as it allows for quicker movement of troops and supplies between Europe and Asia. Yet the Allies are not defeated by this single blow. They still control vast territories and have significant resources at their disposal. The war is far from over, and the Axis powers must continue to fight on multiple fronts. It's a significant blow, but not a knockout punch. The Allies are resilient and have the capability to regroup and counterattack. The capture of the Suez Canal is a tactical victory,
but it does not cripple the Allied forces. They are already planning their next moves, strategizing on how to reclaim lost ground and push back against the Axis advances. Why? Because the Axis face a fundamental problem, a war on multiple fronts. The complexity of managing multiple theaters of war stretches their resources and military capabilities. The Western Front, the Eastern Front, and the North African campaign all demand attention and resources. This dispersion of effort weakens their overall strategic position. While Rommel celebrates in North Africa, the Eastern Front rages. The German forces, under the command of General Erwin Rommel, have achieved notable successes in the North African desert. However, these victories are overshadowed by the brutal and relentless conflict on the Eastern Front, where the Soviet Union's Red Army is fiercely resisting the German invasion. The German war machine is locked in a titanic struggle with the Soviet Union. Resources are stretched thin. The harsh Russian winter, vast distances, and determined Soviet resistance are taking a toll on the German military. Supplies are dwindling, and the morale of the troops is being tested. The Eastern Front is a grueling and costly battleground. The capture of the Suez, while strategically important, does not change this fundamental imbalance. The Axis powers must find a way to overcome the challenges of fighting on multiple fronts. The Allies, with their vast resources and strategic depth, remain a formidable opponent. The war is far from decided, and the struggle for dominance continues. Furthermore, the Axis fail to grasp the true strength of their enemies. Across the Atlantic, a sleeping giant stirs the United States of America. America's entry into the war unleashes its vast industrial potential. Factories churn out tanks, planes, and ships at an astonishing rate. The arsenal of democracy, as it becomes known, tips the balance of industrial power decisively in favor of the Allies. The Axis, despite their early victories, cannot hope to compete with this level of production. Section 6, the Eastern Behemoth, the Soviet Union's unstoppable force. Meanwhile, in the East, the Soviet Union, despite suffering terrible losses, shows no signs of collapsing. The Red Army, fueled by patriotism and a burning desire for revenge, fights with incredible ferocity. The vastness of Russia, coupled with the Red Army's unwavering resistance, bleeds the Wehrmacht dry. The capture of the Suez Canal, a strategic sideshow in the grand scheme of the war, does little to alter the course of this titanic struggle. Section 7. A world ablaze. The Axis on multiple fronts. The Axis powers find themselves in an increasingly precarious situation. Initially, their rapid advances across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific had given them a sense of invincibility. However, as the war dragged on, the reality of their overextended lines and the vast resources required to maintain their conquests began to set in. The leadership, once confident, now faced the daunting task of sustaining a war on multiple fronts. They're spread thin, fighting on multiple fronts against enemies whose industrial capacity dwarfs their own. The Allies, with their superior production capabilities, were able to churn out tanks, planes, and ships at an unprecedented rate. Factories in the United States, the Soviet Union, and the British Empire worked around the clock, ensuring a steady stream of war materials to the front lines. In contrast, the Axis powers struggled to keep up, their resources stretched to the breaking point. The capture of the Suez Canal, while a propaganda victory, does little to ease their strategic predicament. The canal was a crucial supply route, and its control was vital for maintaining lines of communication and supply between Europe and Asia. However, the Axis powers soon realized that holding the canal was one thing, but defending it against relentless Allied attacks was another. The strategic importance of the canal meant it was a constant target, draining valuable resources and manpower. In the Pacific, the war against the United States and its allies rages on. The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean presented unique challenges. Island-hopping campaigns, fierce naval battles, and relentless air raids characterized the conflict. The Japanese, despite their early successes, found themselves increasingly on the defensive. The sheer industrial might of the United States, combined with the determination of its allies, began to turn the tide of the war. In Europe, resistance movements tie down valuable troops. From the forests of Poland to the mountains of Yugoslavia, partisan groups waged a relentless guerrilla war against the occupying Axis forces. These resistance fighters, often supported by the Allies, carried out sabotage operations, disrupted supply lines, and provided crucial intelligence. The Axis powers were forced to divert significant numbers of troops to combat these insurgencies, further weakening their frontline positions. The Axis war machine, despite its early successes, is grinding to a halt under the sheer weight of its commitments. The initial blitzkrieg tactics that had brought swift victories were no longer effective. The prolonged conflict, combined with the relentless pressure from the Allies on all fronts, began to take its toll. Cities lay in ruins, economies were in shambles, and the morale of both soldiers and civilians plummeted. The once formidable Axis powers were now on the defensive, struggling to hold on to their gains as the tide of war turned inexorably against them. Section 8. The tide turns. The inevitable counteroffensive. The tide begins to turn. Allied industrial might makes itself felt. Fresh troops, equipped with superior weaponry, pour onto the battlefields. In North Africa, the Allies regroup and launch a counteroffensive. The long supply lines that hampered their efforts after the fall of the Suez are mitigated by American logistical expertise. The tide of war, once seemingly unstoppable, begins to recede. Section 9. Victory forged in the fires of adversity. The fall of the Suez Canal, a moment of Axis triumph, ultimately proves to be a hollow victory. The Axis powers, overstretched and outproduced, are unable to capitalize on their success. The Allies, their resolve hardened by adversity, rally and push back. The capture of the Suez Canal serves as a stark reminder. Victory in war is not merely about capturing territory, but about breaking the enemy's will to fight. This, ultimately, the Axis powers fail to do.